Welcome to Stories with Traction, unedited and unfiltered. These are real conversations with leaders who have walked through trials and triumph. In a world of AI-polished sound bites and scripted perfection, this podcast isn't about being flawless. It's about being purposeful. I'm your host, Matt Zaun. We're going to find out what drives these leaders, what's their story, and how can we learn from their experiences. Get inspired and enjoy Stories with Traction. I'm so excited for this episode because today I'm joined by Steve Schmidt. He is the Chief Revenue Officer and co-owner of Magnetic, and also the co-owner and creative oversight at Spotlight Sioux Falls. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Matt, hi, good morning. Welcome to Sioux Falls, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time with me this morning.
And tell us a little bit about Sioux Falls, since you mentioned it, because I don't think a lot of people around the country, I think the image that they have of South Dakota might not actually be reality. So tell us a little bit about Sioux Falls.
Sioux Falls. So South Dakota is, I heard a stat that was really wild last night, and it was about the world, global, like go macro on it. And half of everybody who's ever been alive is alive right now. 700 million people. We're 350, are alive right now. There's only been 700 million people ever in the existence of the earth. So let's start with that thought. That's wild. And if you drill down, like Sioux Falls is only 264,000 of those people. So like the amount of population is irrelevant. Like it doesn't even blip on the map. Total states above, 1.2 million, right? A lot of cities have that in their perimeter. So I think for us, South Dakota is where I grew up. I moved back here, fell in love with the girl, and she is now the CEO of Magnetic. But there's some story between there because it was a very bumpy road and kind of, getting to where we are, and continues to be a little bumpy, but it's a story worth diving into. We'll get to that for sure.
Sure. I love Sioux Falls. I mentioned to you, I've been there. Incredibly walkable area, gorgeous. Yeah. It was stunningly beautiful when I was there. So tell us a little bit about what you do. So at Magnetic, take us through your day-to-day, some of the things that you do for your clients.
Yeah. Magnetic is at scale a content agency. To simplify things, we have white labeled a software because we feel that content such as this episode is a great way to get long form content in evergreen. And that's usually where the problem starts. It used to be that you didn't have content. Now it's you have too much of it or the wrong kind. You have no idea what you should be doing. And I think what you do and what we're trying to do is really what it is, storytelling. How do we get people to be authentic? Kind of cut the BS, because it's not believable and it's not real. And if it was real, nobody wants to hear about it because that's not the life they're living unless you're trying to show them exactly how to do it for themselves. So I think what we've really done is try to get our clients to turn the lens and get off of the mic and start looking out to the audience. So whether that's outbound sequences in the language we use, it's always driving back to content and always driving back to what we perceive to be what people care about solving within that little segment of audience.
Yeah. So you mentioned almost too much content. It's interesting because a few years ago, there were a lot of companies, they were starving for content, very little content. Now there's a sea of content. So I want you to talk about that. Where do you see content going, especially with AI and people now having more of an ability to put out subpar content? Where the great content creators out there, how do they stay relevant with all the noise?
I love that you said that. We just have a new episode. You just named the episode for me. We have a golfer, a coach, for example, who knows his audience is on LinkedIn, knows it's on Facebook and Instagram. There are a lot of golfers, right? And so for him, the concept was, I think you just named it, subpar golf, right? I love that. But they want to call it golf arrested, right? And so like we're getting out and actually saying, today we got a submission. This person says their buddy Hank has a terrible hook or slice. And we go to Hank's workplace. We literally come in dressed as police and we arrest him. And then we take him in the car. And so like, imagine on the way there, we're saying, okay, here's who we're going to today. And like the crew's sitting in like a limo. And then we get there and everybody runs out, right? Because it has to be entertaining. It has to be fun. And at the end of the day, he's still A, getting content out, B, showing what he really wants to, which is that he is a golf coach, but most importantly, he has a really big golf line. He has bags, this, that. So he's got $1 million or $2 million e-com company that he's now trying to stand up with content. And so that's the creative way we're trying to tell that story, because it's about the people, not the guy with the podcast. So that's like our effort and what we're trying to do. And that definitely takes us off of, call it like this style of interview. But I think for people, especially starting out, like just get out there and show people what you do. And we're finding a lot of success in that.
So I hear you saying that people are going to need to be way more creative. They're going to have to
Way
not
more
only
creative.
think outside the box, but do outside the box. So for companies that might have dipped their toe into content, they've started different things, give them some ideas of where to look for creativity.
I use a tool called vidIQ. It's very simple. When I look to see like how do I find what my competition is doing, that's extremely relevant, because you want to find out what people are talking about. Right from there, the tools can serve you up some basic, okay, pretty vanilla scores. What we found is our YouTube thumbnails, titles, and descriptions that score the lowest perform the best. So like right there, you can say like throw the tool out the window and just use it for research. And then ultimately, we want to find out like, okay, if the problem we're solving is more revenue, good luck, right? So when you're going on YouTube, like there's a lot of people in B2B who are competing for telling you what to do on LinkedIn. Like, so if you want to get in that space right now, I'd say, barrier to entry says very difficult. Stay out, right? Oh, I want to be an AI consultant. Okay, let's do some research. What are people making content about when they're trying to pitch themselves as AI consultants? That's a big thing right now, right? So how do you differentiate yourself? Because everybody needs it and everybody's selling it. So how do you become that conduit that says, I'm the education wheel, not the person trying to sell you that? And I think that, Matt, the easier you can get people out of shorts into playlists onto YouTube and then into your website in that order, like that's the content move now. And I think that's the thing where everybody goes, what do you mean? I got to get this content to be like perform and I got to measure it. And like all the things that Chris Walker said 3 years ago are now like not true. I need attribution. I'd say, okay, let's back up. Like if you're using Chris Walker and you're a small business, like you're probably looking at the wrong person for what your influence is. Chris is brilliant at a scale of a $50 to $100 million SaaS company in a lot of instances, not all, in a lot. Here, that doesn't apply. You don't have a 10K, 20K budget for ads. Like you're looking at $1,000 maybe a month, 2,500. And that is, how do you take that post? And on LinkedIn, this is the move that we've been seeing, right? Is now you just got to boost it. They're not going to give you the algorithm. So you've got to be able to budget in addition to your posts. And this is kind of a wake up call for everybody out there. I'm not telling you this is the way. This is the way we've been successful, is using that post organically and then using the ones that perform okay and then putting money behind it immediately as a personal post. And then hyper segmenting down, because you can say, now I want 4,000 views to these specific people only. And followers, lookalike lists go down. Like that's where the money is being made right now. And that's where we're seeing the biggest, call it click to lead conversion, which is what everybody wants.
Thanks for breaking that down for us. I really appreciate it, because I feel like a lot of people, they understand the importance of content getting out there, personal branding, but then there's no intentionality. There's no strategy behind that. So I really appreciate you breaking that down. So speaking of strategy, I am interested to know a little bit about your background. What positioned you to get to where you are today? So let's backtrack. Let's rewind and go back in time. I want to talk about teenage Steve. So when you were a teenager, what did you want? What did you, when you thought of potential job or career path or an idea of what you'd be doing in the future, what did that look like?
I think when I was in high school, I took drumming very seriously. And so I wanted to become the best drummer in the world. And I would practice and practice and practice. Now, looking back, really I became very good at drums because it was a way for me to deal with life. Like I didn't realize at the time, like, oh, this thing's really helping me because I went through some shit, like a lot of people. Like my dad left, I was sad about it. So I started drumming and kind of hiding my emotions a little bit, but like that got me through it. And then like being really good at that, kind of looked up and I was like, oh, well, when you practice at something, you're really good at it. You can get to the top, right? But for me, is the top was the next thing. Like, how do I get really good here? And it was never enough, right? And so I'd get a full ride music scholarship to a school, and 2 weeks in, I quit. I'd say it's not for me. And so I had a lot of those false starts of, I'd say, if anything, I had a poor lens of I was looking at the freeze frame moment in life of saying, how do I get to that. I want to climb that Everest and get that feeling. And then I win, right? I've had so many of those, man. We've done tour with Limp Bizkit in Cypress Hill, played concerts in front of 10,000 people, started company. Like I did all the things that should make you feel a certain way. None of it would work, So ultimately it was an ism. I got sober 7.5 years ago. So like if I had to say, like my teen years and college years were filled with a lot of, me kind of building up what I thought life should be. And my 30s were life kicking me in the ass saying, this is exactly how life is. Shut up and listen. And my 40s have been like dealing with the reality of that and trying to say the freeze frame moment isn't how you measure it. If that indeed is how you kind of were fueled, how do you now be fueled by consistency, quality, and things that don't bring the big impact moments, but provide a lot of impact over time? So I think, adulthood says, a lot of times I find myself looking back and saying, man, life was really good the first 25, 30 years. I think ultimately as a teenager, like what I dreamt of was to be the best at everything because I needed that validation. And now I've learned that I need to and continue to look for other sources, spiritual sources for validation. I try to every day because that makes it so much easier when I'm not looking at myself and how my content and me is doing. And the second I took the spotlight off myself, which is I've had it on myself since age 0, right? Me, and turned the mic around to other people and the camera and said, we should tell their story. Their story is for these 40,000 people. It's not about me. It's become effortless. The content performs and I want to watch it because it's not about me, So it's more of a channeling, I think, what was built with other pretenses to now use it for the right reasons.
Wow. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate your vulnerability with that for sure. So a lot to unpack with what you said. So a few things. So you had mentioned drumming.
Yep.
There's a lot of elements of stage dynamics as it pertains to musicians. So there's three in particular that I always think about from a stage dynamics perspective: Freddie Mercury, Beyonce, and Taylor Swift, right? Three individuals that can dominate a stage, right? And what's interesting to me when people study these individuals, there's so much intentionality and purpose with movement, understanding you hold the mic a certain way, you look a certain way, you go to the stage here, you reach out here. There's gonna prompt an action, a response in that audience.
Yeah.
So from a stage dynamics perspective, when you were drumming, especially the physicality of drumming, do you think that prepared you to understand the nuances of capturing the attention of an audience today?
I love that question. There is yes, and yes. The drummer sets the foundation and the sort of the mood. And then you have to frame it up for everybody. But if it's not meant for everybody else to then be filling in the pocket, it's a terrible sound. They call it like drumming masturbation, right? Where people are like, you just can't stop playing. And so I think what I did learn over time is like the best drummers are the one who sit in the pocket and allow Freddie Mercury to do his thing, which is an incredible thing, right? Taylor Swift, no one's talking about their drummer, right? But the drums are amazing in Taylor Swift's live show. And I think for me, it really allowed me to find predictability, right? And everybody's looking for like a rhythm and consistency. And I think, in my life, I didn't have any consistency. So like drumming gave me extreme discipline and consistency and predictability. And honestly, like control, right? So if I'm really looking at like that, a drummer can control everything, the tempo, the dynamic. And I think for me, that created this area to say like, wow, like I can make this happen. Look at this. I can cause a reaction. I can make the audience jump, and then I started to sing and I took the mic and got off the drums. And our last 6 years was on the microphone. And ultimately, I'll share some footage with you. You can share it or not. We were looking, there's 10,000 people in this crowd. And we didn't have any footage because this is pre-internet. And we finally like dug out the VHS tapes from 1999 and looked at it. And I was just like, wow, we got to a point where we kind of knew the choreography of like, if you could prompt the audience, even with just a look, like they knew it was coming. And then all of a sudden 10,000 people at once, hit the floor. That is a freeze frame moment. I'm going to keep that one in my heart forever.
This episode will be back after a quick break. Are you ready to significantly improve your strategic storytelling skills? If so, join my free storytelling challenge. Once you sign up, you'll get quick, impactful exercises for 5 consecutive days. Whether you want to boost your sales, enhance your marketing, or build a more vibrant company culture, this challenge will give you the tools to make that happen. Just check out the link in the show notes to get started. Okay, back to the episode. That's amazing. It's interesting. You mentioned 3 things: rhythm, consistency, and predictability. And isn't it amazing? That's what every business leader wants, right? They want all 3 of those things. So it is interesting that even as a teen, you were setting the stage for your future today in business. I also want to mention and highlight, you had mentioned 7 years of sobriety. Congratulations on
Thanks,
that.
brother.
That's exceptional. A lot of kudos to you with that. I'm very early on in my journey as it pertains to that. I'm assuming you're
Amen.
referring to alcoholism. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Alcoholism and benzos and cocaine, all of it.
Yeah. So for me, alcohol, I'm 2 months in to nixing
Amen.
alcohol. So very early on, I on and off, on and off, on and off for many, many years. It is astounding what happens when you nix alcohol. I'm learning my sleep has improved, my skin has improved. I lost a ton of weight, more energy. It's just absolutely
Good
incredible.
for you, man.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. And I want to bring that up because there are so many individuals out there that are doing exceptional work. They're highly, highly successful, but behind the scenes, they're struggling with something.
Hmm.
And they might not be full-blown alcoholics. They might be abusing alcohol. So I want you to speak to that. Anyone
Hmm.
listening out there that would never refer to themselves as an alcoholic, they've never even thought about getting help, but they know
Yeah.
that they have been abusing alcohol. What would you say to that individual?
I would say the same thing I say to my brother, right? Who's struggling with alcohol and he struggled for 20 years. I would just say that the other side is waiting for you. It is beautiful. You're just in your own way right now. Like you got to get out of it. Like there isn't anybody hurting you actively. You're the only one hurting yourself. And when you can finally look up and see that, and take the lens off of poor me, all of a sudden you go like, oh my God, like what was I doing? Am I insane? And the answer is like, yes, you are. But the other side is tough. It's not super easy, but when you get to it, life is something that you can deal with. And right now, if that's the state you're in, I think you would agree that it's probably unmanageable. And for me, it just got to ultra unmanagement. So don't get there. I'm sure Matt, you would give the same advice. Like, but if you know, it's okay. You will ultimately be the one to decide. Like, is this too much? Is this affecting it? And there is thousands and thousands of people on LinkedIn and other places who I was really surprised, Matt, by the amount of, like you mentioned, sobriety. Yourself, me, we're on this Zoom call. There's so many people that if you just say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this," or "I've struggled with this," who will be there to help you and probably do business with you because of shared value systems or things that they've done in the past that line up with that.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. For me personally, I had to make it a point to say never again. Like I couldn't give the door open to going back. And that was my
Yep.
big challenge was I'd say, all right, I'll give up alcohol for 2 weeks and then I'd go back in full
Yep.
force. And then I'd give it up for a month and I'd go back. And it wasn't until I texted all of my close friends that I regularly have dinner with, I regularly go out with, where I texted them, I said, never again. If you ever
Yeah.
see an alcoholic beverage in my hand again, you need to question me because never ever again. And
Yeah.
it's been I'm again really early on in my journey, but it's been really, really good so far.
Amen. Well, here's, on this, I've never told this story and I think it's kind of, will be quick, but I think, I don't have it all together. And so like, I got to be careful. I don't want to preach. When I was sick with alcoholism, it looked like, I was going to go to an art show with a friend and I was with my kid, and I'd say, well, I got to Uber there because I got to have 3 drinks beforehand. And then I got to sneak a line of cocaine in. And then I got to puke up a bunch of blood. And then I got to go to this art show and act like I'm a human being. Like that was early alcoholism for me. When it became an 8 ball a day, and things like that. And like I'd go to work and like run into tables when I'm drinking, like that's phase 2. phase 3, we're not even there. Like it just gets worse, right? You just fill in the blanks. Like, and so, I share that now where I used to be like, oh, I don't want anybody to know that or use it against me. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay because I realize like it sounds insane because it is. And that's it. If you can relate to those stories, just know that it will get worse because it just does. Like it doesn't get better ever.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
It is amazing to me, people that I talk to, that they do find sobriety. They become wildly successful. Is that because they're trying to make up for the dopamine depletion that they used to get through drugs and alcohol that they're pouring into their
Really
business?
good
Is that is that
topic.
is that part of it?
Yeah. So I've struggled with the workism, and I'm not going to talk about hours a week. It's just always on my mind. And so when I sold, what happened was, I had a lead generation company. We started in 2022. My ism was kind of redirected there. And then the isms of people liking it and, building this machine from 0 to 5 million and 40 employees in 1 year. And we sold that company to a VC out of Israel. And that $7.2 million cash did not check, whatever. It didn't work. Money wasn't there the next day. They let go of everybody. Half of the people, rioted and said, "You're the worst person ever, Steve." And, I kind of think they're right. In that moment was like, it was a very good chance for me to look and say, like, what are you doing this for? Um, because that was simply for the money, the freeze frame moment. Right. So everything that happened after that, I got a divorce from Melissa and moved out across town. That was 2 years ago, and started Magnetic. And that was in the basement of between sessions of sobbing, essentially, and saying, like, I'm so sick of myself. I don't know how I got to a basement of a townhome in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, when I had this big life plan, And so there was no escape. Thank God. It was just me walking through cornfields and shit every day and being like, I don't want to see anybody. And then ultimately, like I was like, I went to YouTube and I was like, I want my wife back. It just dawned on me that like, this is not the right thing. And so it was about 8 more months, but ultimately I found a coach on YouTube and he helped me become a better person and continues to today. And so the power of content, like I've fixed my life and myself with people I've never met before and paid money to YouTubers. And they hold me accountable, and I'm a part of a community with other men who are just like me, who have been back into their relationship with their wife. And now Melissa and I are together. She's the CEO of Magnetic. And I've kind of gotten out of my own way and let her do that. And we're, together again, planning to get married. So I think that the bridge there is like, it doesn't stop after alcohol. Like I was still trying to really screw things up, and I still am. But I just got to get down on my knees every morning, get out of my own way. And then it works out pretty well for sure.
Wow, that's a powerful story. Congrats. That's absolutely amazing. That's
Thanks, man.
incredible.
Yeah, it's nuts. And she said, she's not the kind of person who would ever want to talk to anybody again who's wronged her. So I think, the transformation is palpable. It has to be though, at this point.
Do you think that you have developed a pattern of self-sabotage in your life?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that is the pattern.
Where do you think that comes from?
So what I've learned through a lot of therapy is yes, self-sabotage, build something up, run away, build something up, run away. Businesses, my first marriage, tried to with this marriage. I think it comes from the when I was young, whatever I did to cope with my emotions said, this isn't great. I can do great things, but I'm not deserving of the next stage because it's too hard, right? Because now I got to sit around and sustain a relationship through good and bad. And I only wanted good. I didn't want any more bad. So that is not a healthy behavior, but it is the one that I dealt with. And I never, I found my dad dead in a hotel, when I was 30, 1 month after I found my son. So there's plenty of instances for me to say, oh, like that's the reason why, or that's the reason why. But, ultimately I chose the path to drink my first drink of scotch the day I found my dad dead in a hotel with bottles of scotch everywhere. And
Wow.
so The loop is the consistency of that pattern is, trying to escape, but never knowing the next step. Because it isn't an escape. It's a thing. Like you're building a thing. It's not an escape. Other people depend on you. And I think that's been the gift for sure, is that lesson.
Wow. You had mentioned emotions, and I do find it interesting that from a business perspective, especially with a lot of businesses being male dominated, a lot of men are not willing to connect with their emotions, talk about
Yeah.
emotions, understand emotions, and to their detriment, because you and I both know if you have a tremendous amount of anger under the surface, eventually that anger is going to come out in very destructive ways.
Yeah.
So what would be some ways that you've learned how to connect with your emotions?
Oh, fuck. Well, disassociation is the easiest path, but it's the worst one. I'd say connecting with my emotions is to walk away from them. I struggle with the immediate reaction to be filled with hot red blood, and I just want to throw it back. It just in my head, like it feels like it's a dizzying reaction. So I need to learn how to walk away, how to tell people I need to think about this. I'm very lucky for Melissa because she knows it, right? She knows that she'll say, "Do you need a minute?" And it used to be like, "Oh, you're a," so it's like now that we know how to work with each other, it works extremely well. Um, Now, do I walk away when I need to? That's the next thing that, like, I will be honest with you. I told my therapist the other day, I said, business, it works out really well, but sometimes, the rumination of that, I can walk away, but then how do I get it off my mind? She says, yeah, pray about it. And I was like, oh gosh, this prayer thing again. And she's like, well, pray for the person, pray for you, pray that they get, pray for them to get better, pray for the best outcome. She goes, what's wrong with that? What's wrong about that? And I said, you're right. I'm making it a problem. I'm like, gosh, dang it, it's me again. Like they're the enemy in my head. They're not paying me today because they want my life to be bad. That's my story. So I think when you stop telling yourself the stories, it gets easier because you don't approach every conversation defensively. And that's you gotta change yourself, because I've learned that I'm the one who's causing the conversation that causes the reaction. So I wish I could say I meditate and pray every day. I don't. I'm not that disciplined, but that's a good step. Take a walk.
Yeah, I appreciate the physicality of that, right? Take a walk. For me, push-ups have been a thing. Not as, I mean, I do push-ups to exercise, but in this case, when I get incredibly frustrated, often with my young children, I found it best to walk into another
I
room,
love that.
do 5 push-ups,
Yeah.
get myself out of that mental state of anger, and just transition into, okay, I'm here. What do I do next? And one of
What?
the things that I learned, pointing and calling, I believe it's what is referred to in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, where you're
Yeah.
literally speaking it out. So for me, doing a couple push-ups and then speaking out what is taking place. So for instance, I have 3 little kids, 11, 9, and 6, and my 6-year-old can really get under my skin quite often. So I'll go in the other room after I get done a few push-ups. I'll speak. I know it's going to sound really weird, but it was so impactful to me in the book Atomic Habits, where I'm speaking out what I'm going to do, and then I realize what I want to do is not it's not steeped in wisdom. So I'll say something
Wow.
like, my 6-year-old is really ticking me off. I'm going to go in the next room and I'm going to yell my head off at him. I'm literally going to get in his face and I'm going to shout at him because I want him
Mm.
to be prompted with fear, recognizing what he's doing is not right. And then after I say that, I recognize to myself, wait a second, why am I going to do that? He's doing an age appropriate thing right now. He's doing
Yeah.
something that any 6-year-old on the planet would probably do. So I need to rework this in my mind. So then I start saying to myself, you know what? I'm going to go in the other room. I'm going to get down on one knee. I'm going to hold his hands and say, buddy, I really love you. But what you're doing right now, it could cause harm to you. You can't be jumping on top of the table trying to swing from the chandelier, right? That's
What a
not going to
gift to
work,
your
right?
son, though, right? You are now, as a man, as a person, changing, attempting to change so much about yourself that his life, your child's life, will now be forever different, and their children and their children. And that's the hard part, because I think to me that's so important. Um, because my dad was adopted. Like, I don't know where his chain comes from, right? But I know that I can break some of that and say, like you. I mean, I used to, God, everything pissed me off. Like, everything was just like, stop doing that. Like, why are you being so loud? Like, but now I go, and then I'm like, I love you. You are being too loud. And so I'm not as smooth as you, but I think they see the effort, and they see, I love that you got down on one knee, because you're meeting them where they're at. And that's the biggest thing is, you looking in the eye and saying like, hey, da da da, da da da. And every time they will lock in and engage with you for sure. I love that. You're a good dad.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So, and I really appreciate your vulnerability on this episode. I mean that sincerely. What
Oh,
what
thanks.
what prompted you to get to that point where you just got to the stage of being authentic and putting it all out there? Was there a certain moment in your life, or was it more of a transition?
Well, it's always been a thing for me to be saying the right thing. I think the key thing to what you said is like, when did I stop caring about the image? And I think that was loosely like a rocky road of more and more over the last 5 years. Like, the more vulnerable I was, the more life gave me the lessons that kicked my ass, and I came out better the other end. So I'm just like, okay, like, this is how you roll. Like, this is like, when I say like cocaine, people used to say, well, you got to leave that out. I'm like, well, why? Because I want someone to be able to hear that and go, oh, I'm not insane. Because otherwise you think, oh, I am insane. No one's like me. I couldn't find anybody, and now with content, if I can share that story and someone says, yeah, he did cocaine 8 years ago and he talked about it online, I don't want to hire him, I'd say, cool. Like, literally, like, we're cool. Like, I'm not mad at you or anything. I'd say, that's a decision that you can make. And at least we're being honest, instead of trying to pretend. And I can't believe that I used to do that. It's insane to me today. But at the time, sobriety seemed insane to me. So um, I think we just have to keep doing the same thing and sharing the story. I think the more you do it, they'd rather hear about that than content anyways, I think.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And one of the things I found fascinating, well, a few things. So one is my background's the political arena. I was a
Yeah.
political speechwriter for quite some time. I was involved in the politics for well over a decade. And when I made the transition from politics to business, I was stunned with the amount of humility a lot of successful business people have, which I wasn't used to in the political arena. Because in
Right.
politics, there's a lot of politicians that their egos are so big they wouldn't fit in this room, right? And then I
Right.
transitioned to business, and I can't tell you how many times I'll be in a company, I'll be shaking hands, and someone will come up to me saying, "Do you know who that was?" That was the owner of the company, right? A multi-billion-dollar company. That was the owner. I wouldn't know this person from a janitor in the room, right? Because they're
Yeah.
so humble. So that was one thing
Yeah.
that was really interesting to me. And then the second thing was, regardless of who I meet from a success perspective, and I've worked with some wildly successful people around the country. I have a goal of speaking in all 50 states. I'm at 25
Hey,
now,
get
so I'm
out to
half.
South Dakota. Come on,
Yeah,
man. We got a
I've
stage
been
for
there.
you.
I've been there. I've spoken in South
That's
Dakota.
right.
That's one
Well, we're
one of
going to
my
do it
one of my
again.
25.
Come through on the way to North Dakota.
Yeah, there you go. I'll be in
Okay.
Fargo, North Dakota in 2 months. I'm excited about that for sure. But so I have a goal of hitting 50. I'm halfway there. Uh, a lot of people that I've met with, incredibly successful people. And what is shocking to me is every single person on the planet, doesn't matter what level of success they've reached, they have some form of an inferiority complex.
Hmm.
Something deep within, they don't think that they have value in some area, right? So they may be really successful as a C-suite executive of their company, but there's something in their life that they feel they're inferior with. And I mention that because, Steve, as you're sharing these different things, as far as from a vulnerability perspective, I found the more vulnerable I am, it almost like reciprocity kicks in and someone's willing to be vulnerable back with me, regardless of who that is. So from a connection perspective, I think you're spot on. There's a lot of people out there that have so much fear about sharing different things with others, but it's amazing what happens when we do that. The connectivity that happens, whether it's our family or our team, or even from a content perspective in general. Some of the most
Yeah.
powerful videos, podcasts that I've shared have come from imperfection, from the
Mm.
mess, right? And I think a lot of powerful stories come from messes, from that struggle victory type perspective. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me. And I think it's awesome that you are. I think your background, and I got to back up. I didn't mention that when I was an elementary kid, I did think about that. I was like, oh, I want to be a political speechwriter, and I probably had to go back to like, oh, I want to control the narrative, right? And I think that's important, is to say what you said is everybody's insecure and inferior, and the only thing I can think of to not do that is to take the lens off yourself, because you're never thinking about yourself when you're talking about or making other people life better. And I think when we think about growing our business, let me get businessy for a second here when we wrap up.
Sure.
I have tried to grow businesses hard. I built 4 really successful companies, 2 complete shit fests, And I think that the one thing I would say is, when you are authentic and intentional from the beginning, and you are engaging in a consistent way, it isn't hard, and people will connect with you. And what you said is dead on. It's kind of like the AI sniffer. People they don't have time for anything. And so when you're producing your content, just remember that, because then if it's not going to be great, don't make it. Like you get out of this thought that I got to produce a post every day and da da da. The only people that created that is the people who are charging you to write a post every day. Believe me, I'm one of them, right? And then we look at it and go, well, why do we got to do it every day? To be consistent. Great. Well, consistency can look different. So you don't have to do anything every day. I think what you need to do is just be consistent, be honest, because when you're not honest and authentic, your story shifts all the time and people don't know what you are or what you're trying to be, because they can smell it and nobody will do business with you. And you go, why aren't people buying from me? And you go, huh. And you just point the finger at yourself, get out of your way and create a product that people actually want, versus trying to sell the thing you are so great at doing. Nobody gives a shit about that anymore. Everybody can be great at things. We have AI. So that's my focus is relationships, and the analog became so much more important for me the last 6 to 12 months, Matt.
It's powerful stuff. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, brother.
There's 3 specific things I'm going to take from a takeaway perspective from our conversation. One is, one of the first things you mentioned was vid ID. I'd never heard of that before, so I'm going to look into that. You mentioned find out what people are
VidIQ, pardon
talking
me,
about.
VidIQ. I
Oh,
just want to make
vidIQ.
sure. Yep.
Okay, vidIQ. Finding out what people are talking about for research purposes.
Totally.
vidIQ. Definitely going to check that out. The second thing was, you mentioned rhythm, consistency, and predictability based on you drumming. And as soon as you said that, I was thinking, in my background, in my life, what might have positioned me for those 3 things. It's interesting that a lot of what we do now here in the present is part of our past, a lot of from our early childhood, which is really interesting. And then the third and final piece, I really appreciate mentioning walk away, the physicality of when you do get angry, to add some physical element to that. It's simple but powerful, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, because a lot of
Mm.
times I see people get angry and it just bubbles over and bad things happen. So something as simple as understanding you're angry, understanding that emotion, and then getting up and literally walking away, creating a physical space to calm yourself and then make a rational, wise decision. I think that is a lot of wisdom, and I appreciate that. I appreciate those 3 things. So Steve, if there's a way people can get in touch with you, they want to get more
Mhm.
information on what you do, where's the best place they can go to get that information?
You can go to 2 places. First is, I'll direct you to the websites. It's probably easier than that. Magnetic.services. It's a really funky name. That is our content engine for large software companies, use us, consultancies. And then Spotlight Sioux Falls.com is the local podcast that we've been privileged to roll out, and it's getting 20K views a day across channels. And it's just a really fun place. So if you head on over there, you're always going to see the latest episodes and see what's shaking in Sioux Falls.
Perfect. I'll include that in the show notes. People could just click and go from there.
Thanks, brother. I really appreciate you. You do content well, and you're a great storyteller.
Thank you. I appreciate your time today, Steve. Thank you for listening to the Stories with Traction podcast. If you found this discussion helpful, please leave a review, since positive reviews help others find these conversations. New episodes drop regularly, so stay tuned. And remember, if you want to persuade with power and inspire those around you to take action, you must share more stories.